Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Thursday edition of the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. I'm hoping that we can get a show in today because go right now, because it is not looking good for me. If I cut out, I apologize. Greg can take over. Yeah, I already see. This is good stuff. Swan says, nice face. Yeah, I'm sure it looks all kinds of distorted right now. Greg, I'll let you take it from here. 8 players added to the practice squad if you want to go through some of those guys, even though they were all kind of expected.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone here, other than one or two, maybe it looks like maybe we just one. We're on the squad before, so we got defensive back Anthony Averett, defensive back Zion Gilbert, defensive back Thomas Graham. So we're bringing that slot cornerback, defensive tackle Jacob Slade, fullback Jack Coletto. Kind of all expected to see that. Linebacker Marcus Haynes, which is one of the new ones. Running back Jonathan Ward, which we reported yesterday, and then tight end Rodney Williams, who was part of the, obviously, along with the rest of the guys, part of the team throughout training camp. Good to see Jack Coletto coming back as well. One guy I'm surprised that I didn't see on this list was John Rice Plumlee. So I guess we'll see how that kind of plays out, maybe, unless he was already brought back and I did not see it. But yeah, so it's kind of expected. I think bringing Thomas Graham back is probably good for the long run of the secondary until maybe they add someone from the outside for that slot corner competition to kind of continue to push Beanie Bishop in a way. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, hopefully I'm anything that I'm being said or that I'm saying actually is being heard. No receivers yet. Swan points out here. No receivers yet on the practice squad. I do think that there's going to be a receiver situation resolving itself one way or the other. That big one is Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, the Steelers remain in on that situation. He is not showing up to 49ers practice. And the big issue there is that they have medically cleared him, which now is putting the hold in excuse aside, saying that is no longer an excuse. You have to practice or you are subject to fines. And 2 days in a row now, he has not practiced with the 49ers. So I think we're nearing a solution here at this point, one way or the other. What say you?
Yeah, I mean we've thought it's been close to a solution for a long time now. We've said before that we feel like it's at a conclusion at some point. So I don't even. Yeah, that's yeah. So yeah, wow. So yeah, I mean
I pay for gigabit internet.
Yeah.
I'm not happy.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I mean, but as far as Ayuk goes, I mean, he's obviously, if he's not at practice by now, there's obviously something brewing there. There's something has got to break sooner or later, or else he's going to be starting. I mean, obviously, he's probably already starting to pay fines, but we'll see how it plays out. I think just this was it was going to come to this point sooner or later if they didn't come to an agreement, and now we're kind of seeing it play out in real time.
Yeah, I do think we are probably nearing a solution here at some point. The problem is the 49ers can dig themselves in as deep as possible, which is forcing Brandon Ayuk to not only miss games, but even really challenge him and be like, miss as many games as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to trade you. We can make you miss all the games, essentially half of the season. And then it gets to a point in which you have to show up. And if you don't, we can toll your contract. And then you have to play under the 5th-year option again next year.
Mm-hmm.
So they could hold him hostage and make him play at some point for the 49ers this season. Or they can just accept the fact that they're not going to sign him to an extension and then just trade him. Like, if you're not going to pay him, trade him. It's one of those things where this is where you begin to see the organization, how each organization operates.
Yeah.
What's one of Mike Tomlin's most famous Tomlinisms? We want volunteers, not hostages.
Yep.
And here the 49ers are, they could, and we're going to, I mean, John Lynch is going to have to show his cards here eventually. Is he going to literally hold Brandon Ayuk hostage and force him to play for the 49ers this season one way or the other? Because I'm no GM, but Trent Williams is more important to that team than Brandon Ayuk is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they need to get that situation resolved by next week.
Yeah. I mean, Trent Williams would probably be one of the most important situations on any team in the NFL, given his stature, given his playing ability on the offensive line, given his position. Brandon Ayuk is just another, tool in that offense, but he's also a very crucial tool for that offense. And obviously, given where that team is right now, given that, they're probably they're probably a Super Bowl contender. He plays a big part in that offense. He plays a big role. So they don't just want to give him away for anything if he wants out of there. They're going to try to, figure out either a way to keep him or get a solid return for him in the long run that can contribute this year, not just picks and things of that nature. But he's obviously, it's kind of come to a boiling point in a way. They're both kind of, standing pat. And yeah, it's going to boil over the edge of the pot at some point here soon, and something's going to have to happen.
Yeah, Jim asks a good question here. I've addressed it before, but I don't mind answering it again because it's important for everybody to be informed. He said, speaking of extensions, what about Cam and Muth? Is the Ayuk situation holding them up? As far as I was told, and this was not yesterday that I was told this, but they would like this situation with Brandon Ayuk resolved before they work out extensions with Hayward and Muth or Najee or whoever else. And so that's why, okay, I'm going to go back to what I reported the first week of training camp, is that the Steelers were convinced, and the word that I was given was convinced, that they're going to get Brandon Ayuk, DK Metcalf, or Tyreek Hill. Now, obviously, we know that Tyreek Hill is not going to happen. He re-signed with the Dolphins, signed a contract extension. But of those three players, the most likely was always going to be Brandon Ayuk. And that they were convinced that they were going to get one of these guys. And we have seen Omar Khan barely lift a finger to add to that receiver room. Now, that just might tell me that he's convinced with how this is playing out that they're eventually going to get him. It may not be by the beginning of the season, but they may get him at some point. And the more that this plays out and we're starting to see different things, like they may have had, like, this is just guessing on my part. So let's just say, obviously the Steelers were given permission by the 49ers to negotiate with Brandon and his representation. And so maybe in those conversations, they told Omar, yeah, we're digging in as far as we can go. We're willing to miss games. And then Omar might have some intel on how the 49ers run things and might be like, if it gets to that point, we'll trade him. We're not going to deal with that headache. Kyle Shanahan won't deal with that headache. And so maybe they kind of already read the tea leaves and knew what was going to happen and knew how this is going to play out. This isn't done playing out yet, but maybe that's why we haven't seen Omar lift a finger here. And so I don't know. I keep going back and forth on whether they're actually going to get him or not. But the fact of the matter is that Brandon is digging in. He's willing to at least lose money over this. It's how much longer are the 49ers gonna kid themselves? They either just are gonna have to either pay him, or again, but I would say then trade him, but they don't have to. They can literally force him to play this year. They can. Otherwise, Brandon's just gonna be back in the same situation again next year. So this really is about how the 49ers want to, how far do they want to go with this thing? Do they really want this to be a completely, like, the bloodiest war it could possibly be, or do they just want to rid themselves of a situation?
And that's where it goes for me. That's where it goes back to the situation they're in. I mean, they're a Super Bowl contender. They have talent all over the field. Brandon Ayuk plays a pretty big role in that offense, so it's not like they can just give him away for nothing. So I think it really depends. Obviously, if John Lynch was completely sold on the deal that Omar Khan has offered him, Brandon Ayuk might be a Steeler already. So he's not completely sold on that move. So he's trying to get whatever he can out of this situation. But it comes to a point where when you have a player like this who's holding out, who's bringing a distraction to the team, and this team, the 49ers have those Super Bowl aspirations, when does it become too much to where they just are done with it? Because it seemed like just kind of following from afar, like, obviously we don't cover the 49ers, but with everything going on there, it's all in the national news. Seeing the quotes from their press conferences of both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, it seems that they are coming, they're just starting to get, it's the whole situation is starting to get old, and that's where it thinks like, all right, what are we doing here?
And Spice here says it, maybe somehow my everything's running slow for me. It says you can't force him, he can sit out. Like, that's right, like, he can sit out, but the problem with that is that if it gets to a certain, this is not playing on the franchise tag. This is not the Le'Veon Bell situation. So I think some people think that this is the Lev Bell situation. This is not. If he is playing on the 5th-year option, if he gets to a certain point, you can only sit out so many games. If it gets past that point, I think it's 9 games. If he gets past that point and he sits out one extra game than he's allotted, the 49ers can toll his contract. And then he has to play on the 5th-year option again next year.
Wasn't there someone who did it last year? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I thought there was someone who held out last year and it got to like maybe the 5th or 6th game of the season. I might be remembering wrong, but
I honestly don't remember. To be completely honest, I don't remember. But yeah, so this is not the same thing as what Lev Bell went through, because Lev Bell was playing on the franchise tag. Franchise tag and 5th-year options are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And so, is this the next move? Like, is this the next move the Steelers are waiting for? Like, is this why we haven't seen Cam and Muth or Najee signed to extensions? And that's what I was told most recently. I'm trying to follow up with as many people as I possibly can on that. And I would think that is going to continue to remain true. They need to figure it out one way or the other, because they have to add to that room, of Pickens and Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, who's still injured, by the way, and Scotty Miller. That's not doing it like, that's just not going to get it done. And so again, that just makes me think that there is a move on the horizon. It's just when and who.
Yeah.
Is this just Omar again reading the tea leaves, knowing, maybe he has enough intel to be like, we're going to get him. At one point, we're going to get him.
Yeah, he's just digging his heels in. And he's just, he's being patient like he always has.
And maybe that's why you haven't seen the Steelers overpay for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my internet is just absolutely crapping out here. We'll try to get to a couple questions here, and I'll let Greg handle them while I try to figure out what the heck's going on with the internet. So,
All right.
Good old Xfinity here. Xfinity internet is. If there is anybody who works for Xfinity in the chat or watching, please help me out here, because I pay for gigabit internet. This should not be happening, and it's not because I'm in my basement. I have other things that run just fine on the Wi-Fi.
If you guys have any questions, fire them in the chat, and we can figure out what's the word.
Here's one right there.
Rick. I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything of him coming back. Obviously, I think that was one person that we thought could contribute if he was signed back and get elevated on game day. I've said it multiple times. I thought he came on really strong towards the end of camp. He was starting to get gunner reps on special teams. He was starting to play a big role. I thought he had a pretty good game against the Lions to end the preseason. So for me, he was the biggest surprise to get cut on roster cut day. So I would have liked to see him back. Like, I was, pretty happy to see Jack Coletto back as well. I thought he was going to be one of those guys that could come back, maybe get elevated on game day and kind of go from there. But yeah, I haven't heard anything of him coming back as of right now. But again, that could, something could be possibly, in the future. There's another one. How's Troy? Troy Fatanu. He participated in practice lightly. He's getting back to light work. He was, stretching in practice yesterday during the open viewing period that we saw. I'm kind of hesitant to say that he would be ready for week 1. Chris, I think you agree with that as well. But it's just kind of a work in progress right now. He doesn't look very, super nimble. He was just kind of going through some light work and stretching and everything like that. So he's still working his way back. I wouldn't expect it to be back for week 1. But we'll see how that plays out. There's another one down here. Quez Watkins. Quez Watkins is not on the 53-man final roster. I believe was he a vested veteran, Chris? Do you remember Quez?
Quez Watkins is not on the 53, and yes, he was released as a vested veteran.
Okay, so he could have signed with anyone right away, but he is not on the final 53-man roster. Which he, after that botched punt return in the first preseason game, he kind of set himself back a little bit, I think. But for all you guys who weren't listening after the first practice after that preseason game, that was his first time returning punts in the NFL. He hadn't done it since college, so it's been a couple years. And that was his first time doing it in the NFL. Obviously, a lot different. Balls go higher, hang in the air a lot longer. So definitely a big change for him there. So we'll see how that happens. And there it goes. No, he's switching things around. He's trying to figure it out. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see what else we got, guys. In there, right. So if you guys weren't listening here earlier in the show, Frank kind of lays it out here. So the practice squad: Anthony Averett, Zion Gilbert, Thomas Graham Jr., Jacob Slade, Jack Coletto, Marcus Haynes, Jonathan Ward, Rodney Williams. A lot of what we expected to see back for the practice squad. Obviously, Jonathan Ward had a pretty strong training camp until he suffered an injury. So he's back. We'll see what he can do on the practice squad. Rodney Williams, he was kind of the odd man out in the tight end room. Obviously, Arthur Smith is a huge fan of tight ends. It's a lot in they're used a lot in the offense. And he had other than a slight injury early on in training camp, he had a pretty strong training camp. They liked him, so it's good to see him back and everything like that. Jack Coletto, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that gets elevated on game days to work in Arthur Smith's offense. Obviously, we've seen them use the I formation near the goal line and get some work in there. So he just didn't do enough on special teams probably to make the final 53-man roster. So hold on, Chris is texting me, so let's see what happens here. All right, so he'll be back in 5 minutes. So I'll try to extend this as much as I can. So bear with me here. But yeah, Jack Leto, it's good to see him make the 53-man roster. So we'll see, how he plays into it. But yeah, he definitely could be an option on game day, as Rick asked. So that could be an option moving forward. Where'd it go? Cordarrelle Patterson. Kick some practice. Plumlee's been doing it a lot from the parts that we saw in training camp. Never saw him return kicks during training camp or anything like that when they were down in Latrobe and things of that nature. It was mostly John Rice Plumlee and a couple other guys. I think Quez was back there a couple times and things of that nature. If you guys saw Mike Tomlin's post-game press conference in Detroit, he kind of spoke on this. He's seen enough of it throughout Patterson's career that he didn't need to see it when it doesn't count. So I think he's kind of saving that for the regular season. So I would assume we'll see that in week 1 in Atlanta and kind of see how it goes from there. But that's where that kind of stands right now. Let's see what else we got here.
We'll see if the restart worked. I tried to restart my computer, but this is still Xfinity downloading at 6 megabits per second.
Thank you very much for this, Stephen A. Chris, what do we got here? Who's your pick as the surprise contributor currently on the 53-man roster? There's a lot. I think most of these guys that made the final 53-man roster were kind of what we expected. It's kind of guys that have been around the block and things of that nature. I wouldn't necessarily call it a surprise. I think I'm really high on Connor Hayward this year. I think he could be a decent contributor in the passing game. He's got he's received a lot of praise from Justin Fields, from Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson spoke on him pretty highly a couple times throughout the preseason and throughout training camp and everything like that. So I think he could be big. I really like what DeMarvin Leal has done. Obviously I think his versatility plays pretty big into making the 53-man roster. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. I think he would probably be the top guy that I would think might play a big role and have an impact that was kind of on the bubble. But most of these guys were kind of expected. So I wouldn't necessarily say there was any super surprises, but that's kind of where I would leave it. Chris, how's your internet going?
We'll see. Jalen Elliott was a surprise for me on the 53, but we'll see. Yeah. I keep getting the like low connection thing, so okay. We'll see.
I just don't think he'll be I don't think Jalen Elliott will be a contributor at all. It was a huge surprise that he made the 53-man roster, but I don't think he'll be a contributor.
Yeah. Really quick, Randy has a question here. And this is a really good question because, and hopefully the internet is good enough where I can properly answer it. Because I've seen this question pop up quite a bit, whether it be in our Steelers feed or on any stories written or anything. Randy asks, if Brandon Ayuk is being difficult with his current team, what's the guarantee he'll have the winning team player attitude with the Steelers? The real simple answer to that is just money talks.
Yeah.
Once the dude gets paid, he gets paid. He's happy. I want to bring everybody back to the TJ Watt hold-in situation. That wasn't resolved until right near the very end. And I can tell you right now that if there were any fans that were concerned, and try to transport yourself back to that time, that situation in which any doubt crept in that might not get done, or why it was taking so long, and are the Steelers, are they being cheap? Is TJ Watt being unreasonable with what he's asking? I could tell you right now, people like Mike Tomlin and others did not care one bit that TJ was out for that length of time. They did not care. They didn't care that he didn't practice. They didn't care because, if anything, they knew that he was going to be healthy. And second, that once he got paid, once he got his contract, he'd be fine. And lo and behold, that very first week, he was a monster. He completely terrorized Josh Allen in that opener. And so I don't think that this is a situation in which you have to define Brandon Ayuk as some sort of diva, or that, okay, well, he's not going to get the ball enough, he's going to throw a fit or anything like that. The dude just wants to get paid. And he was very skeptical that the 49ers were going to give him a contract, and he's absolutely right about that because he doesn't have one yet. And so he, is seeing what the receiver market's doing, what guys are getting paid right now. Justin Jefferson gets a massive contract. CeeDee Lamb gets a massive contract. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets a contract. Brandon's like, man, I'm in that same class. Yeah. He might not be in the same class as like Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, but he's in that next tier down. The guys who are still getting 28 to 30 million. He's like, man, I need that. Like, this is what I'm worth. Pay me.
Yeah.
And so that's ultimately what this boils down to. This is not a situation where you can define him as a diva.
Yeah, he just wants his money. And, I've always been, a big believer in sometimes that a change of scenery kind of always can fix the problem as well, too. You do something, I feel like when you do something like this, even if you get paid, it's not going to fix the whole situation. I feel like a trade has got to be,
you would
it's
think.
got to be the result, you would think, but I mean, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah. I'm seeing some people like telling me like different things to do with my internet. Man,
yeah,
there's nothing I can do. This is Xfinity. I'm downloading at 4 megabits per second. Like, there's just nothing you can do with that.
It's definitely Xfinity.
Yeah. So, because like I never had this issue. Like, it's funny because I never had this issue whenever I was living in Texas. I had fiber internet, and so anytime like anything was happening with anytime, like, for example, if we're working and it's like, oh, is anybody having issues with the system, or if I say something like it is issue with the system, like the last thing I want to hear anybody tell me is like, oh, is it your internet? Like, it's never my internet. I never have that issue because it's fiber. The only time I ever have issue with my internet is if my power's out. That I cannot say that right now. Xfinity has not been great so far, and it might not be worth the Peacock subscription. I might have to be looking at some fiber options here.
Are you hardwired in, or are you Wi-Fi?
No, I'm Wi-Fi, but again, I have other things that run on the Wi-Fi. So when the internet runs like normally, everything's fine. I was watching the first Captain America movie on my new TV down here in the basement, watching it in full blown 4K, like Dolby Vision, everything like that, running on Wi-Fi, and it looked amazing. Like,
that's weird.
Internet's running fine, everything's good.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. Anyway, don't want to talk about my internet issues on the freaking Southside P podcast. and Swan, with this Ayuk stuff, I'm not trying to stay on this stuff, but he says Ayuk is a distraction I'm sure the team is not happy about. I think that's one of the reasons why, like, people are continuing to think, like, people like me are continuing to think, like, maybe this does result in a trade. So it's, I don't know, man. I do think the 49ers are starting to get like John Lynch and them are starting to get a little peeved at this situation. I mean, yesterday he was just like, you, at some point you got to play.
Yeah, I mean, if you could, like, part of our job is to kind of observe and kind of just see things in people's body language and things like that, and you can just tell how upset he was. Like Jay Moods, he puts it perfectly right here. Seems spicy. He looked spicy yesterday, and obviously I haven't seen all of Kyle Shanahan's press conferences and things like that, but seeing the transcripts and things of that nature, just seeing how he responds to some of these questions, you can tell the situation is getting old in San Francisco. And it's getting to the front office. It's getting to the head coach. because they're trying. I mean, they're trying to do something out there, and obviously, this is, you know, like people have said in here, this is a distraction. So
yeah. Really quick, there's one wrinkle that people are wanting to throw into this Ayuk thing, and I just don't think it's going to happen. The Browns restructured Deshaun Watson's contract earlier today and cleared a lot of cap space by doing so.
It was like
I don't know what their end game is here. Yeah, I don't know what their end game is here now. Maybe it's to roll over the cap space. I don't know what again, I don't know what their end game. It's not to sign Brandon Ayuk or trade for and sign Brandon Ayuk, because he already told them no. He already offered Cleveland already offered Brandon more money than what the Steelers are offering, and he said no. So he doesn't want to go. And so the only thing that I can think is that they want to try to roll over that cap, because if you look at their cap situation, it's terrible. You don't talk about cap hell. Yeah, terrible. I want to pull up. I'll let you kind of give a little thing here on it, but I'm gonna pull up Deshaun Watson's new restructured contract and start giving you the new cap hits.
It's bad. I mean, that their cap situation to begin with, when they trade for him, was ridiculous to start with. You know, turning that salary into signing bonus probably makes it even worse. Because, like, you know, obviously, you know, with converting that to a signing bonus, it's while it might defer it from this year, it's always going to come back sooner or later. Like, it's always going to stack things up. And so I can't even, like, I haven't looked at it at all, but I can't even imagine what it's going to be, you know, down the line. Do you have it? Or are you laughing at something else?
Okay. With the restructured contract.
Yeah.
His cap hit this year is now only 27.9.
Okay. That's so
I say only. Because the next two seasons, his cap hit is $72.9 million.
In both years? Like, not combined in both years?
In both years.
That's ridiculous.
In both each.
That's and like the even, I don't want to say funny, but the even like worst part about that situation is he hasn't even really done anything in Cleveland since he's joined that team. And to have that big of a hit, which is, I'm gonna guess that I don't even have to say guess, but that's got to be the biggest cap hit in the league by far, correct?
I don't know if it is the biggest cap hit or not
for a single player.
Even if they were to roll over, probably. But if they were to roll over their cap space now without doing any other, that wouldn't even cover Deshaun Watson's cap hit next year.
That's crazy.
So maybe that's what they're doing. Like, now, granted, I don't know what they're in, because they could have just kept his cap hit what it was instead of restructuring. I don't know. I'm not a cap wizard. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend. It's probably not as bad as it looks on the surface, but all I know is that Deshaun Watson's cap hit for the next two seasons is going to be nearly $73 million each year.
That's funny.
That is. And people in Cleveland want to talk about the Steelers quarterback situation and say it's somehow worse.
Yeah,
I disagree. All right. So before the internet really does completely implode, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If we do get some sort of news on Brandon Ayuk, or if a trade does go through, we may try to do an emergency episode of the podcast. I don't know for sure. We've been on this Brandon Ayuk thing for so long that it really it is still a situation in which Swan says Chris's internet needs a restructure. No, Xfinity needs a restructure of how they throttle people's internet. This is one of the my recommendation to anyone is if you can have fiber internet over cable, do it. Do it. They cannot throttle fiber internet. They can throttle cable internet. That is my recommendation to you. And Lori says Fios. I may look into that. I'm already looking into possibly getting Verizon as my new phone carrier because AT&T is not great where I live, and I've had AT&T for a long time. They've been great, but I don't have great reception where I live, so we've been looking at possibly Verizon. And so, like, if I can get a deal on Fios and it's available in my area, it would be yes, I would. I'd be very, very happy. I'd be a happy man. Fiber internet over cable all day long. That's the easiest. That's the easiest bet to make. So anyway, enough of my internet issues. Maybe we'll be able to talk about a wide receiver edition at some point soon. Either way, what's next for Omar? That's really the big question. Yep. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So thank you everybody for joining today and dealing with all of our technical issues. We really appreciate you guys, and we should be back tomorrow, same time. It'll be a couple of hours before my first fantasy football draft. I'm excited about it. It's the league that I run, 10 teams.
I had
PPR.
I had one last night.
Nice. Where'd you pick rough. And who'd you get in the first round?
So it actually is an auction keeper league. So it's a little bit different. So I picked that. I got George Pickens. Picked up George Pickens. I think he's gonna have a big year. Joey Burrow. Didn't turn out great. You start with a certain amount of money, and you gotta obviously buy players as it goes. I was very conservative at the beginning. I ended up with $98 left with 2 picks to go. I spent $50 on the 49ers defense, and I spent $48 on Justin Tucker. So that's how it went.
All right. No, ours is a good old snake draft. I don't know where I'm picking yet. I thought about doing like a pick out of a hat type thing and like recording a video and showing everybody and doing that. We did that on my other league. I play in a league with Dale Lawley, former employee here at DK Pittsburgh Sports, works for the Steelers now, but he and I are in a league, and we're drafting Monday night, I think. And that's how we picked. That one's a 12-team league, and I'm picking 6th, so I'm actually really happy with that one.
There you go, right in the middle.
Yeah, I like being. If I'm not gonna have the first overall pick, I want to be right in the middle. I want to be 6 or 7 in a 12-team league. So
no, I agree with you there.
But however, here in recent years, I've had enough time of like in a 10-team league picking like 8th or 9th, where I've still figured out a way to get a pretty solid team. So hopefully I get in a favorable spot tomorrow night too. So we'll see. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. You guys have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Catch you on the Flippity Flip.
See you later, guys.